Hello, and welcome to another episode of Access Your Mastermind. I'm your host, Julie Oldberry. Today, we're joined by Tanya D. Powell. Tanya is an executive leadership coach, international speaker, #1 best-selling author, and results-oriented trainer with over 2 decades of experience in senior leadership roles with multi-billion-dollar companies. She specializes in leadership transformation, communication, and team development, equipping executives and leadership teams with the skills to drive sustainable success. As the founder of the iShift Institute for Transformation, Tanya helps executives, senior managers, and leaders to elevate their leadership capacity through mindset shifts, strategic training, and proven development frameworks. She's a certified leadership coach with the John Maxwell team and with the Napoleon Hill Institute. Tanya is widely recognized for her resilience and inspirational leadership, which has impacted top organizations. Despite facing a global pandemic and a personal cancer diagnosis in 2020, she emerged as a cancer thriver, using her journey to inspire others to lead with purpose and perseverance. Known as the People's Coach, Tanya is celebrated for her authentic, relatable coaching style and her ability to drive real-world leadership transformation. Her mantra, "It is in change that you discover your purpose," reflects her unwavering commitment to helping leaders thrive. We're so happy to welcome Tanya to our show, and let's get started. Hi, Tanya. Welcome. How are you today?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I am so honored to be here. I'm fantastic. Thank you both for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
So are we. Absolutely.
This is going to be a great conversation, Tanya and Julie. We're going to be speaking about auto-suggestion and just how important the role of auto-suggestion played in your success, Tanya. And so we're super excited to be able to hear from you.
Well, I,
So
I, I think it's going to be a crazy conversation.
So the topic auto suggestion, nowadays many people in the world or in this space is using suggestion and auto suggestion and self-talk. But Napoleon Hill in his book Think and Grow Rich, he said he describes that and he describes in auto suggestion that our mind is like a fertile garden. And if we do not consciously and if we do not speak words self-talk to us in a positive manner, that weeds will come into our fertile mind and just grow. So, if you can you give us in the audience your a certain time that you use auto suggestion or how you think about the mind being a fertile ground?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I love that question. And in fact, it's such a timely conversation. Because just yesterday, I was teaching this to a group of young ladies ages 12 to 14. Those are
Okay.
the persons I'm afraid of. Julie knows this. But just being able to teach them that the mind is like the garden. What is it that we say? You can plant flowers or you can plant weeds. And so for me, in understanding that, it takes me back to harvest time. You know, I harvest, I harvest what I sow.
Mhm.
What is it that I want to harvest? If it is that I want oranges, then I can't plant corn, even though corn is good, but it's oranges that I want. And, learning that has made such a difference in my life. And I didn't understand that for a long time. And so I think the question you asked me is how has it shown up for me? How do I use it, right?
Yes, yeah.
Um, I think I think when I became aware of it, because we talk about sometimes we are unconscious competence. We're doing things, but we're not conscious of what we're doing. We're not sure, but it's happening. I think when I became very aware of the power of autosuggestion and what it meant, the self-talk and the shifting of beliefs, right, was in 2020, just a few years ago. And just to share a little bit of my story, 2020 was when I was navigating one of the hardest times in my life. That's when I was, being treated for breast cancer, right? And going through that. And I remember just thinking about myself being healthy, being running my 5Ks again. And so I started journaling. To be honest, I didn't know that what I was doing at the time was autosuggestion. But I was just kept journaling. I'm so happy and grateful because I'd heard that from Bob Proctor. I'm so happy and grateful that I'm healthy now. I'm so happy and grateful that my health has been restored. I'm so happy and grateful that, I'm so happy and grateful. I didn't realize that I was programming. And so it just kept me focused on moving forward. I wasn't even concerned about what the doctors were doing. I was just so focused on what do I want? What am I saying to myself? And I
Right.
think that is the time and the biggest thing for me in recognizing how self-talks aided me certainly in my recovery. I mean, I believe that and I'm standing behind that.
Tanya, had you when you realized that you were just sick and everything, did you seek out this sort of positive mindset? Were you looking like specifically for it, or was that something that you had just done for yourself where you're thinking, I'm just going to change my thinking about this? Or have you always had sort of that positive talk within yourself
Mhm.
and you just dug into it more when
Yeah,
this situation you were presented with?
yeah. So first of all, Julia, I say if I was that positive thinking person all the way through, I wouldn't have been in the situation, right? Because we talk about, just the breakdown, the disintegration coming from negative and whatnots, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later. But there are no coincidences in life, and
Mm.
everything happens for a reason, and life is not happening to us, but for us and through us.
Yes.
And so the year before, in 2019, my mom had been diagnosed with colon cancer, and I was being her caregiver, quit my job, everything, being her caregiver. We were in Los Angeles. We had to fly up. And while I was there, I knew of Bob Proctor before. I had connected with listening and that sort of a thing. I'm a John Maxwell certified coach, so I'd started to get some introduction into the material. But it's while I was there with my mom that Bob had a program on Paradigm Shift, and we were online and we were listening, and we would listen throughout the days. And that's when I started to say, oh, that's what that means. That's what that means. And starting to put it together. So the following year, when I was diagnosed, right? And the thing about it is that my mom, now we didn't know this is what she was doing. I remember one day she said, I'm going to put a picture of me of when I was healthy. And I love that picture. And she put it up on the wall, and she'd look at it every morning.
Mm.
And we didn't know that's what we were doing. We were just doing these things. We were listening to Joel Osteen speaking positive. Listening to Bob Proctor, but I certainly still did not have a name for it. So when
Mm.
I was diagnosed, I didn't have a name for it, but I just know I was writing positive. I was seeing positive. For us, it was about perspective. I mean, we got so deep into perspective, right? This is going to sound crazy, but I did say this is going to be a crazy conversation, that we even renamed the days when we had to go for chemotherapy. We renamed it body cleanse days. right?
Okay.
Because we kept thinking there's something in the body that needs to be expelled.
Mm.
But what it did for us mentally was that we didn't get bogged down because intellectually we know that chemo is a poison in the body, a poison for good, yes. But we realized that when we started to think about it that way, the feelings we'd get, and we wouldn't want to go, but we knew we had to go, and then we'd feel sick. And the moment, I kid you not, the moment we renamed it to say, "Ooh, we're going for body cleanse day," the feelings that were generated in our body was very different.
Mm.
The results we were getting, we would be walking out of that room smiling, and other patients are looking at us like, are they crazy? And so it the short answer, Julie, is that it has evolved. My knowledge and understanding has evolved. I've always been sort of an optimist, but the evolution is happening now. Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. I really love to hear that. And we just actually had on our show featured Julia Gale, and she's
Hmm.
a raw foods cancer coach and
Mm.
all of that. And she's been doing some phenomenal work in
Yes.
that area.
I'm in a mastermind
Well,
with
are you
Julia and
okay? All
Liz.
right.
Yeah.
I was gonna
Okay.
say if you don't know her, you guys will definitely have a great conversation, but I'm
Yep.
glad to know you're already connected. That's awesome.
Yep. Yep.
Beautiful. Yeah. So Napoleon Hill talks about that auto-suggestion tends to work best when it's practiced with faith. And we've just been
Hmm.
discussing faith for the past few weeks. But, faith isn't always easy. So
Mm.
how
Hmm.
do you cultivate belief when doubts start to creep in?
Yeah. Wow. That is for me like the million-dollar question. And we have this saying, new level, new devil, right? Every time you think you hit a level, or every time you hit a level and you're about to go big, another set of doubt creep in, something else happens. And yes, you're right. And I'm sure you've discussed this, that faith does amplify autosuggestion. So here's a switch that was flipped for me recently because doubts are natural, right? In fact, I've come to the place in my life where I welcome them because if I
Wow.
don't hit this,
That's
wait a minute, then I'm like, I'm too comfortable. I'm not growing. I'm not stretching, right? And so Dan Matthews teaches in the Institute. And the day he said, faith is knowing. It's a knowing that I am able because God is able. And it's like, whoa, whoa. If I believe in a higher power, and my higher power is God, we know it's different for other persons, then faith means that I can do it, and when we read The
yeah.
Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard, he really expounds on I and my father are one. And that's when faith kicked in for me. Oh, I can do this because there's a higher power. There's my higher power. And so when he also said, and then belief is knowing that it is already done. I was like, hey, so when the doubts come in, because for me, the doubts kick in when I'm moving to another level, when I'm about to get out of my comfort zone, when I'm about to come on a podcast like this, I'm like, oh my God, am I gonna be able to come on and say what I really want to say or can say? Those doubts kick in. And so when it kicks in for me, it becomes, hold on a minute. I'm so happy and grateful that, right? And
Yes.
whatever it is, but I have faith. I can because there's a higher power. I would not have been led or invited to this podcast if it wasn't for a bigger reason. So it's not about ego, how you may sound, how you may look. Julia, as I said, listen, me and these backgrounds, my hair look a little wonky, but that's not what it's about.
Mm.
And then when I lean into belief, it is already done. You got to hold on to something and that knowing. And so the flip for me has now become, for me, when doubt creeps in, I embrace it. I say, yes, this means that I'm being stretched. This means that it's time for another level. This
Wow.
means that something is unfolding for me. Because think about it. You don't have doubt when you're driving your car. You know how to drive your car. Geez, we can probably drive our cars and we can put our lipstick on while we're driving. That's how good we are. We don't have doubts about that. But as soon as it's time for something big, for something bold, for something magnificent, the doubt creeps in. And so for me now, it's embracing that. Yes, let's have a conversation, right? I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I think, that's really insightful and somewhat profound, I think, to talk about embracing the doubt in that way.
hmm
And
hmm
when you look at these challenges, I mean, you're talking for you, cancer, that's a pretty serious scenario to be faced with. And your ability to look at that and say, this is there's you were looking for the seed almost of what's the benefit in that. And
Yes.
I know,
Yes.
through our coaching and everything, we're, taught to look at those things because there's always a benefit in it.
Yes.
Even, that's just polarity, right? Like everything
Yeah.
exists in its opposite. So I'm glad that you're able to find that and find your way to, it seems quite literally, talk yourself through your recovery. And I'm
You
really
know,
curious to know
mhm.
if your doctors had mentioned anything to you. Where are you, or the nurses or anybody that was involved in your care, have they spoken about the importance of, or how your attitude differed from others and things like that?
Have you been sitting in these hospital rooms with me?
I'm watching you, Tanya. Yes.
It's so funny you said that because I remember. My mom in 2019, we were in LA from January to August. She got better. We did what we had to do, came back home, took her back to her home, come back. What am I going to do with my life now? Um, and then, a few months after, so this was in October, sitting in front of my doctor, and he said, "Boy, Tanya, not the news that we wanted, but this is what is going on." My husband still laughs to this day. He said, "I literally looked at the doctor and said, 'Really? Bring it on.'"
Wow.
Right. But I think that was because I had gone through, and this is why I said there are no coincidences. I think because I'd gone through with my mom. And while we were going through together, we had created what we call a recipe for thriving through adversity: prayer, meditation, affirmations, gratitude, movement, just listening to something positive. So now I even speak about that. I've created a little journal on on my recipe or recipe. So I took that with me. I took that with me. I remember one day I turned up to my chemo 4 hours long and have my backpack filled with books and journals. My oncologist looked at me and he said, you can sleep when you get here. And my response was, sleep? I don't have time to sleep. I have people to see, places to go, um, clients to coach. I hadn't started really coaching, but that's what I started dreaming about doing. Um, that was me. And so every time they would see me reading something, and my attitude would be just so I'm like upbeat. But I was reading The Power of the Subconscious Mind by
Oh,
Joseph
I love
Murphy.
that book.
Oh,
Yeah, it's just
oh, I would fall, and then boy, I tell you, and then I discovered Joseph Rodriguez reading that on YouTube. I would literally fall asleep every night listening to Joseph reading Joseph Murphy's book. And it became so obvious, I think, not because I was trying to do anything or show anything. Because remember, I'm going through a situation and trying to help myself through, to go through. So I'm focusing on my breakthrough. I'm focusing on my goal. I'm doing my journaling at the hospital while I'm waiting. I'm doing my reading. My oncologist called me and she said, listen, I know that everyone have their own journey and everyone will be different and respond differently to the treatment, but there is something different about you. Your your rate of healing, of going through this thing, your attitude in going through this thing. I want to know what you're doing. So I
mm,
shared and I showed her my books and showed her my journals and spoke about what I was doing. And then she says, would it be possible for you and I to have a conversation about how we can create a program for other cancer patients? Because there must be something here. There
right.
must be something in what you're doing. I would be the person who I'd go in the room and I would say to the doctor, I need the chair that's at the furthest end, away from people who are focused on their dying, because I'm focused on life.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize it was so obvious, right? Um, and she just called and she said, can we create something? Can we bring whatever you're doing into the healing of other people?
And did
Yeah.
they create the program?
We're still working on it.
Oh,
We're working on
wonderful.
it. Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah, yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And
Wow.
they've used me in their journal. One of the doctors called and said, well, can we use you as an example in our case study? Am I getting paid? But
I like,
it's
Yeah.
yeah. But just connecting it with the self-talk, the auto-suggestion, you know, prior to the diagnosis, I was really active, my 5Ks in the gym. Then this thing happens. And so it started with me just seeing myself doing the things I loved again, you know? Um, and then I would feel, I'm you may not come to this, but I think as I was thinking about it, I thought about has it never worked, auto suggestion, or can I think of a time when it was like, whoa. And I remember one day, I'm connecting it back to my story again. One day I came home from chemotherapy. Now, as I said, and I've shared that, I think I went through my journey as easy as anyone could. It wasn't easy, but I didn't have like, the nausea that comes with the treatment and whatnot. Yes, I lost my hair and all that, but I was I was good. I didn't have pains and aches and I'm grateful. But one day I came home, Julie, and I found myself in so much pain. My body was aching and I couldn't understand it. And I was just learning the power of the mind. I'm reading, think thoughts. And I asked myself I remember I got up and I asked myself the question, Tanya, what are you thinking that's causing you to feel this way? Normally I'd ask the question, why are you feeling this way? Why
Yeah.
are you feeling this way? But I paused it and I said, what are you thinking that's causing you to feel this way? And Nick, I went 7 levels deep in my questioning.
Mm.
Turns out this was the day where someone who had connected with in the the hospital had passed away. And so my thought process now started to become, what if it doesn't work? What if I die? What if? And I was going down the rabbit hole.
Mm.
And the moment I did that, I was like, hold on, come on. And then I started to get back to my positive self-talk. Oh, no, no, Tanya, remember, you are healthy. You are restored. You are fine. And I kid you not, if it didn't happen to me, I wouldn't believe it. And so I
That's true.
kid you not when I tell you that the pain, the aches, they just. And I think that was the moment when it really clicked that, wait a minute, how I speak to myself, because the body is only an instrument of the mind. So whatever I'm thinking and how I speak to myself up here is going to impact down here. And I think in that moment, it just connected for me.
Yeah, I love how you took the time to ask yourself the questions like, what am I thinking about? Because that is the order of operations here, right? Like
Hmm.
thought creates the feeling, right?
Yes.
Feeling moves to action. Like it all goes back to the thought, just like you said.
Yes.
And so to ask yourself when you're in pain and say, well, what am I thinking and whatnot?
Hmm.
I talk about I have issues in my stomach or like GERD or whatever. And I'm always like, you know, I kind of rooted it down to, I think that's the part of the body where your anger issues are stored or something. So I started to ask myself, like, what am I angry about in life?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't consider myself to be like an angry person, but I'll go
Right.
through the exercise, and I did identify a couple of things that I was, you know, not satisfied with or whatnot that could definitely lead toward anger. And as I start to change my thinking in those areas, I start to improve my
Hmm.
condition. And, I'm really not using medicines and all of this. I'm managing and, the best I can. Obviously, if it exacerbates or something, I would go
Right.
to a doctor, but I don't, I'm trying to cure the dis-ease with, by curing what I'm thinking about and what's
Yes.
cycling through my mind. And just to hear you using that and so successfully, obviously, with that I just think it's incredible. So
Yeah.
thank you for
Absolutely.
sharing that.
I have a comment and a question, Tanya. Well, you dropped so many. I prepare whenever I have a meeting with Tanya to have my pen and paper because she lets it go. So, so I like how you stated focusing on the breakthrough. And
Mhm.
so I would like to hear about that. And also a second question or second comment would be how Napoleon Hill says that our thoughts will not reach the subconscious mind unless they're emotionalized. So I would like to hear from you about the focusing on on the breakthrough because
Yeah.
many of us are listeners and as well as Julie and I like I just want to hear that so I can practice it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. And thank you for that share, Julie. Um, you know, I remember the first question I asked myself when I got my diagnosis was, it wasn't why me. I remember my question was, what's in this for me? I literally said, okay, God, what's in this for me? And I remember as I was thinking it through, I went home and, I cried and whatnot, and then got up and said, okay, God, what's in it for me? And my other question became, okay, how can I grow through this? What's going on here? because I had this knowing, this belief that my health was going to catch up back. I believed that I was healthy. It's going to catch up. So that wasn't even the concern. I know it sounds strange, but then I started to ask the question, what is in this for me? And here's the funny thing. So here's the thing. And this is why we also have to be mindful of our words and how we ask for things, right?
Yes.
I've always wanted to be a speaker, but I've always said, but I don't have a powerful story to tell. And I felt like when I asked that question, like I got the answer, you wanted a story? Okay, here is a story. That's my interpretation, right? So that became, oh, now I have a goal. I can, weirdly, I know. So now it became, now I have a goal. Oh my gosh, I know I'm going to emerge from this. I'm going to have a story to tell. I'm going to be able to share with people. I'm going to be able to help other women. That's my focus. That's the breakthrough, my vision. So, it was like, I'm not going to focus on the breakdown. And the breakdown for me represented what's going on with the body, whatever the doctors were doing. If you ask me certain questions about my treatment and everything, I'll tell you to go ask my doctor because for me, I had no business meddling with that. My sole purpose was to focus on where I'm going, what this lesson, what this adversity was teaching me. What was the seed of good in this for me to take forward to the world? Because in my mind, I had reconciled that you want to show powerfully in the world, you want a story to tell. All right, let me take you through something so you can go empower women. Because you know what? 1 out of every 8 women in the workplace gets breast cancer. Too many die not because, they die because they don't have to, but they don't know this stuff.
Sure.
And so I just kept focusing on that. We talk about focusing on our vision, on our goal, right? And so it was always the breakthrough, the breakthrough, the breakthrough, the breakthrough for me.
Tanya,
Yeah,
that
that's
reminds me so much of when we hear at Ella Vitality from Troy and Dolly saying, everything is fundamentally meaningless. Like we decide what things mean. And so
Yes,
when you were faced with that and you're like, what's in this for me? Like you had the chance to make up what was in it for you and make it
exactly.
mean exactly
yes.
what you wanted it to mean and say, this is my lesson. This is my story to tell. I'm getting, just like you explained, I'm getting my story. And you
Yes.
saw it that way and you wanted a powerful one. So, of course you had to overcome odds and, all of that. But I love how that ties in from that angle as well.
Hmm.
So thanks for bringing that
Yes.
out. And thank you so much for sharing so personally about your experience. Appreciate that.
Uh, well, remember, I asked for a story.
You wanted to be a speaker. Here you are.
I wanted to be a speaker. I needed a message, right?
Yes.
Earlier this week, I was speaking with a guest on the show, and Napoleon Hill states in one of his books that after these 20 years of doing research of these individuals who had reached a level of success, he said that he noticed a thin gold line and flowing in between all the individuals. And like, for instance, they all practiced the habit of going the extra mile. They all had a positive mental attitude. These are characteristics that these successful individuals had. And so, what I'm hearing from Tanya is not only through autosuggestion, but the belief, the faith,
Yes.
the expectancy. And so, I'm really grateful to hear your words. But how important it is for us to know what a positive mental attitude is, as we even as we practice autosuggestion,
Mhm.
because it's that we are choosing the words that we're suggesting to ourselves.
Yes.
Like Tanya, you remind me of a definition of having your mind in your possession and directing it any which way that you desire. Because when the doctor said something to you, you shielded that suggestion.
Hmm.
So I appreciate you showing us and showing us our viewers like what it really means by the real, the raw, and relatable, what it really means to
Yeah.
take hold of your mind and direct it
Yeah.
exactly how you want it to go to.
Yeah. And I think for me, and it's not easy. We know we say, for me, one of the things I speak about and share with my clients when we're going through things, a long time ago, a former mentor of mine has said, Tanya, life is pretty simple. It's just us humans that complicate it. At the time, he was like a billionaire at the time. I was like, you can say whatever you want to say because you're like a billionaire. For the rest
Easy
of
to say
us,
that.
it's not that simple. And so I say, you know, things things are simple, but they're not easy. And so because for me, easy demands intentionality, easy demands focus, easy demands vision, easy demands persistence, right? And so as we are going through anything, easy, a positive mental attitude is not going to solve everything. However,
Mm.
however, it does make the journey a lot easier. It does open you up to opportunities, to resources, because it's also about, your positive mental attitude. We can connect that now to the law of attraction because you're vibrating at a certain level. And however you're vibrating, then you're attracting at that level. So for me, it's weird, people would say, because when I was diagnosed, I don't know if Facebook have taken them down, but I have no hair and whatnots, and my skin looked like it's all burnt and whatnots. But I'm on there sharing, guys, this is what is happening, this is what I'm doing, and I'm smiling. And I remember somebody reached out to me and said, I don't feel like you're being authentic because there's no way you could be smiling while you're going through what you're going through.
Wow.
That was one person. But then for me, others were like, oh my God, we're so inspired by how positive you are. I had my aunt in LA, she called me and she said, listen, a friend of mine who you don't even know saw your video and she gave me $100 to give you. I know it's not much, right? I'm like, hey, that can that can do a lot here in Jamaica, given our exchange rate. So I got more just by being positive about it. And I told you, when I was in pain and I go through that positively and I'm journaling and I'm dreaming. Said, this is where a dream like this began, right? And so the simple, for it to be easy, became that positive mental attitude, attracting resources. I attracted so much. That's probably for another podcast down the road, right? Just the people, the energy. One of my physiotherapists, when she found out who my doctors were, right? She looked at me and she said, how did you get the chief of surgery, the chief of plastic surgery, the head of oncology department to be your team? Hey. And
Wow.
that's for me, that's what positive mental attitude is. I mean, even this week, I still do follow-ups. I saw the head of surgery and we're having a conversation and he's making sure I'm okay. And the other patients are sitting there looking at me like, well, who are you? And so,
Aw.
I bring that in because, you mentioned positive mental attitude, but just to connect it to, it's not that we're being happy-go-lucky and feeling like everything is sunshine and daffodils. But when we can see things through that lens, and we can have that perspective and we can reframe. And to I used to feel a little, boy, maybe I'm being too positive. Maybe I'm not taking this thing. No, I'm like, listen, if you're gonna be grumpy, I don't know that we're gonna be in the same space. I make no apologies for my positive mental attitude now, because I recognize that with that, that takes my level of vibration up here. My level of vibration attracts that level of vibration.
Yes.
That's what I want in my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you talked about, I like, talking about the simple but not easy component, and it just kind of made me think about that because, we hear that pretty frequently when we're dealing with this material. But it seems like, the simple part is in the intellectual realm,
Hmm.
right? Like when we look at all of these things, they're really all, and I use this phrase a lot because you said you were working with like 12 and 14-year-olds, like you're talking to children about this
Mhm.
information. I mean, some of
Yeah.
these concepts, like really kindergarteners could grasp onto with no issue whatsoever, right? And but so in that intellectual, that knowing part, like, yeah, I know what an affirmation is. I know that when you go through and you read Think and Grow Rich, like, okay, yeah, I know that. I read that and I know it. But it seems like where you talk about the it's not always easy, that comes into the application,
The application, the
right?
Yes.
being.
The being,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
The
yeah,
doing, the being.
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
I think that's where the difference is. And like you said, when you're at that high vibration, the attraction happens automatically. You're attracting what is within
Yes.
that same vibration, which is the top of
Yeah.
the line in service, the top of the line in care. Like all of those things come with that higher
Yes.
frequency and vibration. So I just think that's really important to point out to, that sort of that distinguishing factor in there a little bit,
Hmm.
because I think, you certainly can teach this to others, younger people,
Younger. Yeah.
that they can learn it. But I think it's, how do we help people through making the application easier?
Yeah.
Right. And how
And
do we like walk them
yeah.
through and like explain it? And that's kind of been, what I really wanted to do, with this podcast, was to get, you know, more granular in the
Hmm.
self-development, because I think a lot of times we talk over people with
Yes.
Yes.
our language, and
Yes.
we're all like, oh, Pete, we got our PMA, our positive mental attitude, this and
Yes.
right. And I'm not calling at you, but you know what I'm saying. Like we just go on and have
Yeah.
certain things that we say, but when we can kind of operationalize this information and say, like,
And
this is very specifically, like very literally, we can break it down, and there, like,
hmm.
here's the steps and here's the process, and this is
Hmm.
what you can do when this happens, like I'm looking for like that perfect like flow chart. Okay, negative thought comes in, what do I do? Funnel it this way, funnel it this way, what happens? And
Yeah.
but I think like people can benefit from that.
Yes.
Because I've
Yes.
had to use that in my head, like to say, okay, no, this isn't an intrusive thought, just boop, pluck you, bye. And, moving on. But I've had to
Yeah.
develop a way, my own way
Yeah. And
to
That
do,
works for you.
yeah, that works for you. It's so interesting that you mentioned that, Julia, because yesterday, as I was standing in front of these 12, 13-year-old young ladies, and I'm introducing them to, we're speaking, I was engaged to speak to them about self-image. And, we're having the conversation, we're developing affirmations. And as I'm watching, um, and I said, so let's do some affirmations. I am whatnot. And, I could see the hesitation and the pause. And I said, all right, the first time my coach said to me, write the word, write your affirmation. I am wealthy. And I'm writing this, so this is what I'm saying to them yesterday. I'm writing, I am wealthy. But ladies, the gremlins in the back of my head were saying, girl, what you talking about? You can't even pay your light bill. And so, I said that and they all started laughing. And then I said to them, so let's do what works for you. Tell me how this feels if you say it this way. I am becoming, and whatever that word is. And literally, I just saw every single girl was like, oh, yes. And they just started writing. So you're right. It's about breaking the material down so that we get it, we connect with it. Persons understand. We meet people where they are. That's the biggest thing for me as a coach. Meeting people where they are. So when I said, just write, I am becoming, and then they were now coming up, I will and I shall. And and it felt good for them. It felt good for them. And I could see that feeling. Again, my big word for this year is embrace. If it doesn't feel like I'm embracing it, as it's becoming one with me. Because I'm thinking about our levels of consciousness. At the first level, it's about me and my little humanness. I think I can. Life is happening to me, boo-hoo.
Yeah.
And then, getting to that level where it's the second level where I'm saying, oh, life is happening for me, for me. Okay, this happened for a reason. But there's still that degree of separation. And this is coming from auto suggestion for me because I'm moving from I can do this by myself to, oh, wait a minute, this is happening for me until I'm now at the place of I am one with the universe. I am one with God. So I'm still figuring out this part in a deeper way. But here's what happens. When I wake up in the mornings and I tell myself that, I don't think there's anything that can come in my day that can stop me. Because I'm affirming that I am one with God. I am one with the universe. I am one with energy. You can't shake me.
I know
You
that's
know?
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Hill talks about how the subconscious mind can't differentiate between reality and like a deeply believed auto-suggestion. So, you just can literally program yourself to be whatever you want. Not saying that, when you're saying I'm one with God, like I know exactly what you mean. I'm not saying that that's not reality, but you know what I'm saying? Like when you're saying like I am a millionaire or, I am
Hmm.
this when you have, 5 cents in the bank, but your subconscious mind doesn't know. And then it's better to keep
Yes.
repeating that in repetition so you can start to get into the energy and, state of that,
Yes.
just trick your subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that you've done
That's
that.
it.
You're like probably the perfect example of you've been tricking it for through everything here,
Her, her.
but I'm proud of
I,
you and
yeah,
but
yeah,
you come out on top each time. And I here it's hard to see that you could ever have a down moment. Like when we see you, like when I see you, generally you always present to the world this way. But I'm sure, you have your moments, but overall, yeah, I'm sure
yeah,
those moments are much fewer and further between than they
yes,
were in your earlier life before you came into
yeah,
an awareness of this
yeah. I
information.
do have those moments, but you're correct. What it is that they have become fewer, and I have become stronger and wiser, I believe, in approaching them. I'm watching the time, but I'm gonna tell you a wild story. Because I feel like I'm mixing the real stuff with some wildness to it, right? So I was on a call with one of my coaches, and she had us identifying self-limiting beliefs. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've done this work already. Why do we need to do this again? Here we go. But I'm saying, you know what, let me be obedient. Let me do the work. Because sometimes we just have to go back to the garden and dig again,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I'm doing the work. Now, this was, what are we, in March? This was in February this year. I'm being real. And I'm telling this story because you just said, I present this way. But girl, the struggle is real over here. So I'm writing and I'm identifying some limiting beliefs. And I'm like, what? So, I live in Jamaica. And I'm realizing that I have this limiting belief that I won't work with Fortune 500 companies, whether the big companies here on the island. And I'm like, whoa, I do work with companies, but it's more medium size. And I'm like, wait a minute. So then we now flip the page. I know we're now reframing, we're having the positive affirmation, we're changing. And I felt it, and I'm writing, no, I am that coach, the coach leaders in Fortune 500 companies. I am the leadership coach for executive. And I think it's one of the first times I was really writing my affirmations, and I felt it. I could feel the energy through me. I could feel like my soul was saying, finally, that my soul was saying, you're finally getting it. Do you know what happened? You're not going to believe this. I told you it's going to be a wild story. Before we got, I believed it. I was writing it. I felt it. I believed it. I knew it. So I even moved from believing it to just this knowing. My phone rang. One of the largest companies on the island. I was referred to them and they were calling. We
Wow.
Oh
need
my
you. This
gosh.
was in February.
Wow.
Wow. I have goosebumps. Oh gosh,
It's
that's amazing. Well,
it's wild.
congratulations. See that it
Thank
works.
you. Yeah, and I share that to say it wasn't the words because I could feel it
There's
and
the
I
belief.
knew something had shifted
Yeah.
in me.
Mhm.
The knowing, the belief, I could feel the energy. I was
Can we talk
vibrating.
about that feeling the energy for a minute? Because I've been
Yeah.
experiencing something like that, and I'm just really curious to know if you have to. Like, I'll go on my walks at night and stuff like that, and when I'm really in like flow with my purpose and and I can feel it, I can actually feel like energy like around me, like surrounding me to the point where it feels like I'm not even really walking like on the ground. Like I feel like I can feel like an energy force like under my feet too. Like that I'm kind of like surrounded in it. So when you're saying like you feel it, because I mean, sometimes when people say like I feel it, and I think maybe you go into like your gut, right? Like I feel it here,
Hmm.
like in there. But I mean, I'm talking like I like actually start to feel like I swell with it, and like I can feel
Yeah.
it like coming out of my skin and stuff like that. So I'm just curious if you said we could go crazy, so
Go,
I'm
you're
gonna
good,
go
Julie.
right
Keep
in
on.
there with you. Do you get anything like that? Or is
Yeah, for me, it's that gut thing, because I'm also leaning into intuition. I did some work in doing some work to recognize when it's intuition versus when it's not, and
Mm.
so I know where in my body. But for me, it's a tingling
Yes,
sensation, and I can hardly write, and it's like I just want to jump and scream
yes.
and shout. And and so when I get like that and I feel it in a particular, so I did an exercise that when it's a lie, I feel it in a particular place in my body. And when it's intuition speaking, I feel it in another place. So while I was on that call, it was
Wow.
zinging through intuition. It has taken work and I'm still working on it. So like, for example, I was listening to a coach, listening to her program, and whilst it sounded so good, it was just landing in where and she's not telling a lie or anything. It's just for me, it's when it's not for me versus when it's for me. Right? That's what I mean. And so it just kept landing in that place of this is not for you. And so I just got off the call. That day on the call, everything was it's for you, it's for you, you know? Yeah. It's an exciting world that we live. And you know what I say, we just have to be open to experience. Now I say every day, I'm open to experiencing magic and miracles, you
Mm.
know. And that's what it's about, getting out of the head, into the heart, into the experience, into our spiritualness,
Mhm.
leave the little limited humanness
Yeah,
for a moment.
right, right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did- Tanya, do you have by any chance a song or any like a music or anything that keeps you tied into your purpose or keeps you kind of motivated? Because we're doing, we're going to be having like a playlist that we're sort of putting together and trying to get everybody's like go-to songs that either fuel their desire, keep them
Yeah.
held on to faith or just
Mhm.
something that keeps you going. Or if not, just like, do you have a favorite song?
No, there are three songs for me
Okay.
in the mornings that go to. One is India Irie I Am. So I know my mastermind ladies use I Am Light. There's another song that
Yes.
she does that says I Am, India Irie. Um, there's a song that I don't know if you'll be able to find it, that Mary Morris's daughter-in-law does, and it's This Is My Life. It's like this grand unveiling of This Is My Life. I'll share the name with her. I share her name with you after. And then there's a third one that when we started the institute, when we were in New York, we all discovered this song. Um, the Lion's Roar or something like that, by Chris Brown, I think. Oh my gosh, I don't remember. It's a gospel song, a religious song. And so those are my really three
That's
go-to. But
awesome.
the India Irie one, that's auto suggestion on steroids, actually, because
The I
every
am light.
line is I am, yeah. Not the I am light. That's
I
there's
am.
another one. I'll share it, yeah. But that is auto suggestion on steroids, that
Great.
song.
I
Yes,
love that.
yes,
Thank you.
yeah.
And then one other thing I wanted to ask you is, um, would we be able to get a copy of that video that you had shared with Ella Vitality when you posted about the students that you talked to, those young girls, and they were so, oh my God, I absolutely loved that video, and I would love to just include it with the podcast or at least like a link to it or something so people can
Oh my
just see
gosh,
how amazing
absolutely.
you are in action and how those young girls just like were so into your energy and just all the great work you're doing
I
with them. I
will,
would
I
love that. I
will.
think it's just so perfect.
Oh my
So if
gosh,
you wouldn't
thank
mind
you.
to share, I would love to get
Absolutely.
that out there. I thought that was
Absolutely.
absolutely beautiful. And then Nick, I know we were pushing up on time, so if you had maybe the last question or line of inquiry for
Yeah,
Anya.
no questions. Just a few comments and a few takeaways. I know that I know we've all gotten received takeaways from you, Tanya. But going into the adversity, like controlling your mind to think about what is in it for me.
Hmm.
There's 8 billion people in the world right now, and me, one person is going through this that I know of right now. What is it going? What am I going through this for? And I like how you say, how can I grow through this?
Yes.
I'm hearing this from other guests as well on the show. Like, just trust the process. What is it I can learn from this? How can I grow how can I grow through this? So, Tanya, I applaud you. I thank you so much for giving us your time this afternoon, and yeah, I'm just humbled to be here with you.
Oh
Yes, it
my
was
gosh,
so
thank you
great.
so much.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you
for
so
having
much,
me.
Tanya,
And just
for
to say
being
to the
here.
listeners, listen, jump on into our world if you're not here yet.
That's right.
Let's
Yes.
sprinkle you with magic, right?
That's perfect. That's a wonderful way to sign off as well. So thank you very much for being with us, Tanya. It was amazing speaking with you today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please, come on, stand right here. Come back here. Hand on the chest, right? Power pose, make it strong. Yes. And I want you to say, I am enough as I am. I am amazing. I am brilliant. I am a masterpiece. Oh, I love how somebody said it right here. I am a So, look at the person beside you. Any side you choose, this side. You're forming a circle over here. And I want you to say, my sister, or brother, you're standing beside a guy. But my sister, you're not alone. My sister, I got you. My sister, I love you. I love how you guys amplify that one. My sister, hold on. My friend, run up on the stage. Run before they cut off my mic. Run. What's your name? Tiana. And Tanya. Can I hold your hand? Right. So look now, going back to it. Tiana. So say to my sister, if you know the person's name, Tiana, you're amazing. Tiana, you are enough. Tiana, you're a masterpiece. Now, if it's okay, either shake hands or bump fists or if I hug people, ask them if you can hug them, right? Whatever you can do. I got a gift for you, alright? So, Shamika, where's Shamika?